The anomaly appeared at 3:42 a.m. on a Tuesday. Dr. Eliza Chen had been awake for nearly 30 hours, swimming through oceans of equations, chasing the elusive unified field theory that had consumed her life for the past decade. Her laboratory, a converted warehouse at the university's edge, hummed with the gentle vibration of quantum arrays and processing cores. One more simulation, she murmured to herself, fingers dancing across the holographic interface, adjusting variables that only a handful of humans on Earth could comprehend. When she activated the sequence, instead of the expected data stream, her laboratory erupted in blinding light. The quantum array pulsed with energy patterns that shouldn't exist, shouldn't be possible. Eliza stumbled backward, shielding her eyes as her equations materialized in three-dimensional holographic form, hanging in the air like mathematical ghosts. "What the hell?" she whispered, watching in awe as the patterns resolved into fractal structures of impossible symmetry, structures that violated fundamental laws of physics. The holographic display cycled through layer after layer of mathematical proofs, each more shocking than the last. These weren't random anomalies. They were patterns, deliberate patterns, with signature elements that repeated across different scales and dimensions. Eliza's hands trembled as she reached toward the floating equations. "This can't be right," she said, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew the math was flawless. What it suggested, however, was beyond revolutionary. It was heretical. Reality itself appeared to be a designed construct. 3 weeks later, Eliza stood before the International Physics Council, her research displayed on massive screens behind her. The assembled scientists, the world's foremost experts in theoretical physics, stared at her with expressions ranging from skepticism to outright hostility. "What you're suggesting, Dr. Chen," said the council chairman, "is that our universe shows evidence of having been engineered. You realize how this sounds?" "I understand it's difficult to accept," Eliza replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "But the mathematical evidence is circumstantial at best," interrupted Dr. Reginald Hayes, her former mentor. "These patterns could easily be explained by natural phenomena we simply don't understand yet." The dismissals continued for hours. By the time she left the conference hall, her groundbreaking discovery had been reduced to Chen's folly across academic channels. University funding for her research was suspended pending review. Colleagues who had once sought her expertise now avoided eye contact in hallways. That night, she sat in her apartment overlooking the city, a glass of untouched whiskey on the table beside her, and a resignation letter drafted on her tablet. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps she'd seen patterns where none existed, allowed her desperation for a breakthrough to cloud her judgment. The lights in her apartment flickered, then died completely. "Power outage," she muttered, rising from her chair, until she noticed the city lights still shining below. Only her apartment had gone dark. Her tablet screen flashed with an emergency alert. "Orbital defense georided malfunction. Unknown OBGCT APPOA. Stay indoors." The air in her living room shimmered, distorting like heat waves over summer asphalt. A tear seemed to open in the fabric of reality itself, not with violence, but with geometric precision, edges folding inward like an origami creation solving itself. Through this impossible aperture stepped three beings that defied description. Their bodies were crystalline, refracting light in mesmerizing patterns, shifting between states of matter with each movement. When they moved, echoes of their forms remained momentarily visible across multiple positions, as though they existed partially outside normal time. The tallest entity stepped forward, its face, a complex arrangement of geometric planes, oriented toward her. No mouth moved, but a chorus of harmonic tones filled the room, somehow resolving into perfect English in her mind. "Dr. Eliza Chen, you had seen the fingerprints of the creators." She backed away until her legs hit the couch. "Who? What are you?" "We are the Kethra. We have traveled 18,000 light years, because what you found isn't just a theory." The crystalline being's form shifted, displaying in its facets the very mathematical patterns from her research. It is your species' invitation to join the cosmic architects. Your mathematics barely scratches the surface, said the Kethra leader, its crystalline body shimmering as it gestured at the holographic projection now dominating Eliza's living room. What appeared was a model of reality that made her breakthrough look like elementary arithmetic. Multi-dimensional equations folded through themselves, revealing layers of cosmic architecture she couldn't begin to comprehend. The model expanded, showing how fundamental forces interlinked across scales from quantum to galactic. Throughout the observable universe, the Kethra continued, only 17 species have discovered the fundamental blueprints of reality, mathematical frameworks that allow for the manipulation of cosmic constants. The second Kethra moved forward, its voice a deeper harmonic. These species form the assembly of architects. We maintain the universe's stability, preventing entropy cascades that would otherwise collapse entire galactic superclusters. Eliza struggled to process what she was hearing. You're saying, you edit reality itself. We maintain it, corrected the third Kethra, smaller than the others, but somehow radiating greater authority. Reality requires constant attention. The universe is not a perfect machine. The leader's crystalline form shifted, producing a small geometric object that hovered between them. Your species faces a choice, Dr. Chen. Join the assembly, or forget. We can erase all knowledge of our visit and your discovery. Erase. Eliza's scientific curiosity immediately gave way to alarm. A simple adjustment to local quantum states. You would awake tomorrow believing your equations failed. Earth would continue its isolated existence. Within 24 hours, Eliza found herself in a secure government facility, surrounded by military officers, scientists, and political leaders from major world powers. The room buzzed with tension as she explained the Kethra's offer. This is preposterous, said General Williams, slamming his fist on the table. For all we know, these aliens could be hostile. Their technology clearly surpasses our defenses. This could be preliminary to invasion. If they wanted to invade, Eliza countered, they wouldn't need an invitation. You saw how they bypassed our entire orbital defense grid. Dr. Yamamoto from the Japanese Space Agency leaned forward. What proof do we have that what they're offering is even real? Perhaps this is some form of psychological warfare. Eliza projected the mathematical models that Kethra had shown her. These equations predict quantum behaviors we've never observed but can test. I've run 3 experiments since their visit. Each confirmed their models with 100% accuracy. The UN Secretary General rubbed her temples. And if we decline, they'll make us forget they were ever here. We lose our one chance to matter on a cosmic scale. Debate raged through the night. Military advisors recommended caution or outright refusal. Religious leaders were divided, some seeing blasphemy, others divine opportunity. Scientists were equally split between excitement and skepticism. By morning, against all advisors' recommendations, Eliza had negotiated humanity's terms. She would accept the invitation, but not alone. 3 additional seats were secured for Earth's representatives to accompany her to the Assembly's central hub. The Axiom, a structure existing between dimensions where the universe's source code was maintained. Her chosen team represented humanity's best hope for comprehending the incomprehensible. Dr. Marcus Way, a quantum programmer whose unorthodox algorithms had revolutionized computing. His ability to conceptualize multidimensional systems made him uniquely qualified to understand the Assembly's technologies. Sophia Okafor, a philosophical mathematician who bridged science and metaphysics. Where others saw only equations, she recognized patterns of thought and being. Jaime Rodriguez, a neurolinguistic savant capable of mapping unknown cognitive patterns. If anyone could help humans communicate with utterly alien minds, it would be him. As the team prepared for departure, Eliza's university office was evacuated after receiving a package containing white powder and a note, "Traitor to humanity." Religious extremists protested outside her apartment, while online forums buzzed with conspiracy theories about her selling out the human race. The night before their scheduled departure, Rodriguez found Eliza on the roof of their secure compound, staring at the stars. "Having second thoughts?" he asked. "Not about going," she replied. "I just wonder if we'll recognize ourselves when we return." "If we return," Rodriguez corrected gently. She nodded. "If we return." The Kethra had not prepared them adequately for the journey. How could they? Human language lacked concepts for travel between dimensions. Eliza felt her consciousness stretch like taffy, pulled through spaces that existed orthogonal to normal reality. She perceived her body simultaneously from infinite angles, saw the component atoms of her being temporarily scatter across probability clouds before reassembling. Wei vomited upon arrival, though the vomit briefly existed as an abstract concept before materializing. Okafor stood motionless, eyes wide, mind struggling to process the transition. But Rodriguez suffered worst of all. "It's everywhere," he screamed, his body convulsing. "I can see everything at once." His neurolinguistic sensitivity, normally his greatest asset, became a liability as his mind fractured, bleeding memories across multiple timelines. The Kethra rushed forward, enveloping him in crystalline fields that stabilized his consciousness. "Your bodies are not designed for interdimensional travel," the Kethra leader explained. "He will recover, but his perception may be altered." When Rodriguez finally stabilized, they took their first real look at the axiom. The structure defied comprehension. From certain angles, it appeared to be a spherical complex larger than Earth's moon. From others, it seemed to extend indefinitely in fractal patterns. Colors existed here that had no names in human language, wavelengths beyond Earth's visual spectrum that somehow their altered perceptions could now process. Gravity pulsed with thought-like rhythms. Architecture existed in more dimensions than humans could naturally perceive, with corridors that curved through geometries Euclid never imagined. This way, the Kethra guided, leading them through spaces where the concept of through became philosophical rather than physical. They passed libraries containing knowledge from trillions of extinct civilizations. Quantum computers the size of solar systems performed calculations that regulated cosmic constants across billions of light years. And then, the other architects. The receiving chamber held representatives from 16 species, each more alien than the last. The Murith, massive tentacled entities with multiple eye clusters, dominated the central platform. Their bodies constantly shifted between states of matter, extensions of themselves reaching into dimensions visible only as mathematical abstractions. "The humans have arrived," announced the Kethra. The chamber filled with a cacophony of communication, some audible, others transmitted as light patterns, quantum fluctuations, or gravitational pulses. Rodriguez winced, his augmented perception struggling to process the overlapping signals. A Murith representative glided forward, its tentacles arranged in what might have been a formal posture. "We have existed for 9 million of your years," it communicated directly into their minds. "We have maintained reality while your ancestors were still arboreal mammals. Your presence here is unprecedented." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Eliza read the room clearly. This wasn't a welcome, it was an inspection. The Central Council, comprising the 3 eldest species, materialized on an elevated platform. Their forms were so abstract that Eliza couldn't discern where their bodies ended and technology began. "You will be assigned to maintenance duty in Sector 9C42, declared a counselor, its thoughts directly implanting meaning into their minds. "A small, uninhabited sector where physical laws have become unstable." Wei stepped forward. "We've come 18,000 light-years to perform basic maintenance." Several architects recoiled at what they perceived as insolence. The counselor's form darkened. "Your species still fights over resources on a single planet," it responded with cutting precision. "Prove you deserve to be here." 3 weeks later, as the human team struggled with the Axiom's reality manipulation interfaces, Eliza's pattern recognition abilities, honed through years of theoretical work, noticed something peculiar. "These baseline parameters don't make sense," she whispered to Wei as they examined the core programming of their assigned sector. "What do you mean?" "There are mathematical inconsistencies in the Axiom's own design." She highlighted sequences where the equations contained subtle contradictions. "These anomalies, it's as if the entire structure is built on flawed assumptions that have gone unchallenged for eons." Wei studied the patterns, eyes widening. "If you're right, it means the architects have been working with a fundamentally incomplete understanding of reality for millions of years. And they don't even know it," Eliza finished. Sector 9C42 was a cosmic disaster zone. 3 conflicting sets of physical laws created destructive wave patterns at their intersections, generating instabilities that threatened to spread to neighboring sectors. This is what they consider basic maintenance. We examined the holographic projection of their assigned region. This sector is a nightmare. Eliza studied the data. The conflicting physics are creating cascade failures along the boundaries. If these spread, neighboring star systems could lose coherent physical laws. Okafor finished. Atoms would stop binding. Light might behave like gravity. Total chaos. For 3 weeks, they attempted traditional approaches, following the established methodologies in the Axiom's archives. The architect's standard solution was brute force computational power, essentially hammering unstable reality back into alignment, forcing standardization through mathematical pressure. Each attempt failed. The instabilities would temporarily subside, then return with greater intensity, like a spring compressed and released. Rodriguez, still recovering from his dimensional exposure, observed from his medical pod. "It's like trying to force 3 languages to become one. They're fundamentally incompatible." On their 27th day, Okafor collapsed from exhaustion, falling into a fevered sleep. When she woke hours later, she lurched upright, eyes wide. "I saw it," she gasped. "I understand the problem." The team gathered around as she sketched furiously on a holographic interface. "We've been trying to force conflicting realities into alignment, but what if that's fundamentally wrong? What if instead," she drew interconnecting patterns, "we create an adaptive framework that allows them to coexist?" Wei stared at her design. Like an object-oriented approach to reality. Instead of forcing standardization, we create controlled interfaces between the conflicting systems. Exactly. Okafor's eyes shone with excitement. "We're essentially debugging reality using concepts from Earth's computer science." Their Murith overseer, architect Vex Still, observed their new approach with obvious skepticism. "This methodology contradicts established practice dating back 6 million years. It communicated. You cannot simply improvise. Reality maintenance." Eliza stood her ground. "With respect, architect, your established practices haven't resolved this sector's instabilities in over a century. We request permission to implement our solution." The Murith's tentacles rippled in what might have been irritation. "Proceed. Your failure will be instructive." The human team worked feverishly, translating Okafor's philosophical insight into practical application. Y programmed adaptive interfaces between conflicting physical laws, creating what amounted to translation protocols between incompatible realities. Where traditional approaches forced standardization, their solution embraced diversity. Instead of homogenizing the sector, they created a harmonious heterogeneity, a cosmic ecosystem where different physics operated within defined boundaries, communicating through carefully designed interfaces. After 3 months of testing and refinement, they activated their solution. The sector's instabilities didn't simply stabilize. They transformed into a self-reinforcing system that actually strengthened the surrounding cosmic fabric. Word spread throughout the Axiom. The human approach became a topic of quiet discussion among younger architect species. The Murith publicly dismissed it as an anomaly, a solution so specific to this particular problem that it held no broader applications. Then disaster struck. Alarms blared throughout the Axiom as a catastrophic rupture erupted in a neighboring sector under Murith supervision. A cascade failure threatened thousands of star systems, spreading faster than traditional methods could contain. "It's accelerating exponentially," reported a panicked Kethra technician. "The Mirith stabilization protocols are failing." Eliza studied the holographic representation of the crisis. "It's a similar pattern to our sector, just at a larger scale." "Could our framework work?" Wei asked. "I think so, but we'd need to adapt it significantly. And quickly." The Mirith Council representative hovered nearby, its tentacles writhing in what might have been anxiety. "Our methods cannot contain this. Billions of sentient beings occupy those systems." Eliza met its gaze clusters. "Let us try our approach." After a moment of internal communication, the Mirith conceded. "Proceed." The human team deployed their adaptive framework at the crisis point, expanding it rapidly to encompass the failing sector. Where traditional methods had attempted to force stability through power, their approach created resilience through adaptability. The cascade slowed, then stopped. The rupture didn't simply heal. It transformed into a stable boundary region that actually strengthened the surrounding cosmic fabric. When the crisis passed, Architect Vic still approached Eliza, its massive form somehow conveying humility despite its alien physiology. In 9 million years of existence, it communicated directly to her mind. "I have never witnessed such an approach." It paused, the mental equivalent of swallowing pride. "Teach us your method, please." Their success with the crisis intervention earned the human team unprecedented access privileges within the Axiom. Species that had previously dismissed them now sought their insights. The Kethra publicly acknowledged the value of human creativity, while the Loon Collective, a species of quantum state entities, requested collaborative research opportunities. Not everyone welcomed their rising influence. The ancient species, particularly the Vox Infinite, watched with thinly veiled resentment as the newcomers gained recognition. "Don't mistake professional courtesy for acceptance," Rodriguez warned after intercepting subtle communication patterns between elder architects. "We're still considered primitives who got lucky." Eliza spent most of her time in the newly accessible archives, studying historical data on cosmic architecture. 3 months into her research, she noticed disturbing patterns. "Look at these entropy readings," she showed her team, highlighting data streams from across the observable universe. "The universe is experiencing accelerating entropy decay." Wei analyzed the figures. "These rates exceed natural progression by orders of magnitude. Something's accelerating universal decay." While Eliza pursued the data anomalies, Rodriguez focused on intercepting communications between species. His mind, forever altered by dimensional exposure, could now perceive linguistic patterns invisible to others. "They're hiding something," he reported one night, his eyes bloodshot from strain. "I've detected encrypted communications between certain Vox Infinite representatives and unknown entities outside the Axiom." He projected a translation matrix he constructed. "They're talking about necessary sacrifices and the greater preservation. And look at these coordinate references. They match regions experiencing unusual decay rates." As they assembled evidence, a terrifying picture emerged. Boundaries between universes were thinning, threatening cascading collapses across the multiverse. And one species appeared to be secretly modifying fundamental constants to protect their civilization at the cost of universal stability. "We need to bring this to the Council," Eliza decided. With concrete evidence, they can't ignore it. The presentation was scheduled for the next universal alignment, an Axiom ceremonial period when all 17 species gathered in the central chamber. Eliza presented their findings methodically, highlighting the correlation between entropic anomalies and suspected manipulations. "The evidence suggests," she concluded, "that systematic modifications to fundamental constants are accelerating universal decay. If these manipulations continue—" The chamber erupted in blinding light as a Vox Infinite counselor rose from its seat. Its body, a column of luminous energy, pulsed with apparent agitation. "These accusations are baseless. It interrupted, its thoughts overwhelming the assembly's communication network. The human delegation is clearly exceeding its authority and understanding. The council issued an immediate censure, terminating the presentation and restricting the human's archive access. As the chamber emptied, the Vox representative approached Eliza, its energy form towering over her. "You meddle in affairs beyond your comprehension," it communicated directly to her mind, bypassing her mental defenses with disturbing ease. "Your species has existed for an eye blink of cosmic time. You cannot understand the necessary balance." "Balance?" Eliza challenged. "You're sacrificing entire regions of spacetime." The Vox's form darkened. "Sometimes existence requires pruning. Pursue this matter further, and your Earth might simply become unnecessary." As the Vox departed, a Kethra counselor pulled Eliza aside, its crystalline form vibrating with what might have been anxiety. "You've discovered what many suspected but none could prove," it whispered. "The assembly isn't the meritocracy we pretend. It's an oligarchy where the founding species maintain control through manipulation and fear." That night, as the team processed their disturbing encounter, their human quarters were breached by a shimmering distortion. Before they could react, the intruders, entities existing partially outside normal dimensionality, targeted Rodriguez. His body convulsed as his mind was forcibly shifted across dimensional planes. By the time security arrived, Rodriguez lay unconscious, neural patterns shattered by forced dimensional shifting. Medical nanites struggled to reassemble his fragmented consciousness. As he was placed in a stabilization chamber, the team faced the horrifying truth. They had uncovered a conspiracy that threatened reality itself, and their enemies had just demonstrated they could destroy any of them with ease. The message was clear. Pursue this further and Earth itself might simply be edited out of reality. "What do we do now?" Wei asked, his voice hollow as they watched Rodriguez's life signs fluctuate. Eliza stared at her unconscious colleague. "We find another way. They've just shown us what they're capable of, and what they're afraid of." Rodriguez's condition deteriorated despite the Axiom's advanced medical technologies. His consciousness, fractured by the dimensional attack, existed in a state of quantum uncertainty, partially present, partially scattered across probability spaces. "His neural patterns are degrading," the Kethra medical specialist explained. "We can sustain his physical form, but his mind is elsewhere." The team kept vigil by his stabilization chamber, watching helplessly as their colleague and friend slipped further away. On the 7th day, Okafor brought a small meditation mat to the medical bay. "I need to process this," she explained. "My way." While Wei and Eliza continued their research in hushed tones, Okafor sat in silent meditation beside Rodriguez's chamber. Her background, combining rigorous mathematics with philosophical inquiry, had always given her a unique perspective. Now, faced with their colleague's suffering, she sought clarity. 3 hours into her meditation, something shifted in her awareness. Later, she would struggle to describe it. A sensation of her consciousness expanding beyond individual boundaries, briefly touching something vast and interconnected. She gasped, eyes snapping open. "I understand." Wei and Eliza rushed to her side as she began sketching frantically on her tablet. "What we've been missing, what all architect species have been missing, is fundamental," she explained, drawing complex patterns. "They approach cosmic architecture as a purely technical discipline, but that's their critical error." She highlighted a section of her equations. Consciousness isn't merely an emergent property of complex systems, it's an essential component of reality itself. The observer effect at a universal scale. Wei studied her equations skeptically. "That's a philosophical position, not a mathematical one." "No," she insisted, "it's both. Look." She expanded her model, showing how conscious observation created different patterns in quantum fields than mechanical measurement. Reality responds differently to conscious manipulation than to mechanical processes. The universe isn't just a machine, it's a relationship. Working through the night, They developed mathematical proofs showing how conscious intent could create resonance patterns in reality's fabric that mechanical processes couldn't achieve. Wei integrated this revolutionary understanding into their framework, creating systems that didn't just manipulate reality, but harmonized with it, establishing a dialogue between observer and observed at cosmic scales. On the morning of the third day, as they debated how to test their theory, Rodriguez's monitoring equipment began emitting urgent alerts. His neural patterns were changing, not degrading further, but reconfiguring into something unprecedented. His eyes snapped open, glowing with internal light. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that shouldn't have been possible from human vocal cords. "I see it all," he whispered. "I'm everywhere." Medical specialists rushed in as Rodriguez's consciousness stabilized in a radically new configuration. The dimensional attack had not destroyed his mind but transformed it. His consciousness had merged temporarily with the axiom itself, giving him unprecedented access to the system's deepest functions. Through this connection, Rodriguez confirmed their suspicions with absolute certainty. The Vox Infinite were systematically siphoning stability from countless inhabited star systems, causing civilizations to collapse in seemingly natural disasters, while channeling that energy to create a perfect realm for their species alone. They believe they're the only consciousness that truly matters, Rodriguez explained, his voice occasionally slipping into harmonics as his connection to the axiom fluctuated. They existed before this universe and are preparing to survive after it. Eliza made her decision. Despite the danger, she would confront the Vox representative with their evidence. With Wei and Okafor disagreeing but respecting her choice, she arranged a private meeting with the Vox counselor. The luminous being received her in a chamber that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. Its form towered above her, radiating cold power. "You have proof of nothing," it stated before she could speak. "Only theories." "We have mathematical certainty," Eliza countered, displaying their findings. "Your species is sacrificing inhabited worlds to preserve your own future." The Vox's luminous form darkened as it approached her. Without warning, Eliza felt her heart stop. The sensation of death lasted precisely 3 seconds before her heart restarted, leaving her gasping on the floor. "We existed before this universe, and will exist after it," the Vox explained calmly. "Your species is less than an eye blink in cosmic time. Continue this investigation, and we won't just erase you. We'll rewrite your entire evolutionary path. Earth will become a barren rock that never developed complex life." As Eliza struggled to breathe, the terrible irony struck her. Humanity's gift for understanding patterns had revealed a truth that might ensure their extinction. Eliza returned to their quarters shaken, her heartbeat still irregular from the Vox's demonstration of power. She described the encounter to her team, including the explicit threat to Earth's existence. "They can unmake our entire evolutionary history," she concluded, her voice hollow. "We're completely outmatched." Wei paced the room, calculating probabilities. If we back down, they continue sacrificing inhabited worlds. If we challenge them directly, Earth might cease to exist. Both options are unacceptable. Rodriguez, still adjusting to his transformed consciousness, suddenly smiled. "They can threaten us, but they've overlooked something fundamental about humans," he said. "We've never accepted extinction quietly." Okafor nodded slowly. "And we're not alone in our concerns. Other species must have noticed the anomalies." "Some have," Rodriguez confirmed. "During my connection with the axiom, I sensed dissatisfaction, fear, suspicion, particularly among the younger architect species. Unable to use official channels, they began reaching out cautiously to potential allies. The crystalline Kethera, who had first contacted humanity, were receptive to their concerns. The Quantum State Loom Collective had independently observed entropy anomalies that aligned with the humans' findings. The photonic Arid A revealed they had suffered unexplained catastrophes in their home systems that coincided with Bach's temporal manipulations. Meeting in hidden subdimensions within the axiom, spaces Rodriguez could access through his partial integration with the system. This shadow coalition began sharing data and developing countermeasures. Their greatest challenge remained communication. Each species processed reality through fundamentally different cognitive architectures, making collaboration painfully slow. Rodriguez, building on his neurolinguistic background and enhanced dimensional awareness, devoted himself to solving this problem. Over 3 intensive weeks, he developed a radically new mathematical language that bridged communication barriers between vastly different forms of consciousness. "It's not just a translation matrix," he explained as he presented his work to the coalition. "It's a completely new cognitive framework that allows different minds to share concepts previously untranslatable." With this breakthrough, the coalition's work accelerated exponentially. Together, they created an autonomous diagnostic system designed to reveal the Vox manipulations to all architects simultaneously. A cosmic transparency protocol that would bypass the assembly's hierarchical communication channels. As they prepared to activate it, disaster struck. A Vox spy embedded within the Iridae detected their plan and alerted the Vox leadership. The Vox response was immediate and devastating. Rather than simply targeting the coalition, they initiated a reality warping protocol that began unraveling the Axiom's dimensional anchors. They would rather destroy the cosmic regulatory system entirely than lose control of it. Reality itself buckled as dimensional planes began separating. Throughout the Axiom, alarm systems activated as the structure began to destabilize. "They're collapsing the dimensional interfaces," Okafor reported, monitoring the cascading failures. "If the Axiom destabilizes completely, universal regulatory systems will fail across billions of light years." Wei studied the rapidly evolving crisis. "The central computational core is the key. If it destabilizes, there's no recovery. I need to reach it." Fighting through dimensional distortions that made normal movement nearly impossible, Wei and a team of Kethra technicians reached the central core only to find it already destabilizing. The other species representatives immediately began theoretical analysis, calculating possible solutions. Wei saw the futility of this approach instantly. "There's no time for calculations," he shouted. "The collapse is accelerating exponentially." He made his decision in an instant, acting on pure human intuition. Before anyone could stop him, Wei physically dove into the dimensional interface, a process no sentient being was meant to survive. His consciousness fragmented across probability space as he manually redirected the collapse, using his disintegrating sense of self as a temporary anchor point for the destabilizing systems. Through tremendous effort, he managed to establish a partial communication link to the Axiom's network. His final words, broadcast throughout the structure, became a rallying cry for the rebellion. "Some things are worth dying for. This universe is one of them." The central core stabilized, but Wei's physical form dissolved into quantum uncertainty, his consciousness scattered across the Axiom systems. What remained wasn't truly Wei anymore, but the echoes of his sacrifice, patterns of human courage embedded in the fabric of cosmic architecture itself. Wei's sacrifice created a moment of universal synchronicity. Every being connected to the Axiom witnessed his final act through the system's shared consciousness. In that singular moment, the truth was undeniable. A member of the youngest, least advanced species had given himself to save a universe he barely understood. Simultaneously, the Coalition's diagnostic system, activated in the chaos, displayed the full extent of the Vox conspiracy in undeniable mathematical clarity. Their manipulations across time and space stood revealed, countless civilizations sacrificed for their private agenda. The Vox responded with overwhelming force. The conflict tore through 11 dimensions as they unleashed technologies hoarded for millions of years, attempting to assert dominance through sheer power. "They're trying to seize control of the regulatory systems," Rodriguez reported, his consciousness partially merged with the Axiom's networks. "If they succeed, they can rewrite reality itself." Elisa coordinated the coalition's response, utilizing their newly established communication protocols to achieve unprecedented coordination between species with radically different perceptual frameworks. In the decisive moment, Okafor implemented her consciousness integration theory at full scale, allowing representatives from every coalition species to temporarily merge awareness with the axiom itself, creating a multi-species consciousness that overwhelmed the Vox defenses. They never understood the true nature of reality, Okafor explained afterward. They treated the universe as a mechanism to be controlled rather than a relationship to be nurtured. That was their fundamental error. When the conflict ended, the Vox were contained, their powers drastically reduced. The search for survivors began, with particular attention to any traces of Y. 3 days later, Rodriguez made a startling discovery. Fragments of Y's consciousness preserved within the dimensional matrices, not enough to fully restore him, but sufficient to maintain a partial existence within the axiom systems. His final act had somehow encoded his essential patterns into the fabric of reality itself. I'm not exactly alive. Y's fragmentary consciousness communicated through the axiom's interfaces, but I'm not gone either. I exist, differently now. In the aftermath, the assembly underwent its first complete restructuring in 9 million years. The Vox were removed from power, their representatives placed under permanent observation. A new democratic council was established, giving voice to all 17 species regardless of age or technological advancement. Dr. Chen was elected as the first chairperson, representing not just Earth, but all younger species who had been marginalized under the old hierarchical system. Under her guidance, the human approach to cosmic architecture, emphasizing adaptation over force, collaboration over hierarchy, and conscious integration over mechanical manipulation, became the new foundation for reality maintenance. Thousands of civilizations on the brink of collapse due to the Vox's sabotage were saved. Stability returned to sectors long written off as unmanageable, as adaptive frameworks replaced rigid standardization. 6 months after the restructuring, humans from Earth began arriving at the axiom for training. They brought fresh perspectives and innovations that revitalized the ancient institution. Rodriguez, whose mind now existed partially within the axiom alongside Y's fragments, made perhaps the most profound discovery of all: mathematical proof that the universe itself possessed a form of collective consciousness that responded to how it was treated, something none of the ancient species, for all their computational power and million-year histories, had ever recognized. It's not just mathematics, he explained to a gathering of all 17 species. The universe isn't simply a system of equations to be solved. It's alive in ways we're only beginning to understand. It responds not just to what we do, but to how we do it. As Earth became a center for cosmic architectural training, humanity's greatest contribution proved to be not their technology or mathematical insights, but their unique capacity to see the universe not as a mechanism to be controlled, but as a living relationship between matter, energy, and consciousness. The multiverse is a conversation, Elisa explained to a class of new architects from 12 different species. Reality is not just governed by laws, but by dialogue. When we approach cosmic architecture with compassion and creativity rather than just calculation, the universe responds differently. The evidence supported her claim. Regions maintained using the human-developed methodologies showed unprecedented stability and resilience. Where the old approaches had required constant adjustment, the new adaptive frameworks evolved naturally to meet changing conditions. Y's fragmented consciousness, now permanently integrated with the axiom, served as both guide and inspiration to new generations of architects. His sacrifice had transformed him into something neither fully human nor fully cosmic, a bridge between individual awareness and universal patterns. I see now what I couldn't before, his distributed consciousness communicated during the first anniversary of the restructuring. The universe isn't just a set of equations, it's a story we're all writing together. Rodriguez, similarly transformed by his partial merger with the axiom, devoted himself to developing increasingly sophisticated communication systems between radically different forms of consciousness. Species that had existed in the same cosmos for millions of years without truly understanding each other began sharing insights previously thought untranslatable. Okefer's philosophical mathematical framework became the foundation for an entirely new approach to cosmic architecture, one that recognized consciousness as an integral part of reality's fabric rather than merely an emergent phenomenon. As for Eliza, she eventually returned to Earth, bringing with her knowledge that transformed human science, philosophy, and spirituality. The understanding that consciousness itself was woven into the cosmic framework changed humanity's perception of its place in the universe. "We are not insignificant because we are small or young," she told the United Nations in her return address. "We are significant precisely because we contribute a unique perspective to the cosmic conversation. Our capacity for wonder, for empathy, for seeing patterns no one else has noticed. These are our greatest gifts to the universe." A century later, as humans worked alongside 16 other species throughout the cosmos, the universe itself seemed to flourish. Stars burned with greater stability. Entropy rates normalized. Life emerged in regions previously thought inhospitable. The universe, it seemed, had been waiting for someone to understand it not just as a mechanism, but as a partner in creation. A perspective that none of the ancient species, for all their power and knowledge, had ever fully grasped. In the end, humanity's place as cosmic architects was secured not through power or longevity, but through their fundamental understanding that the greatest frameworks are built not on control, but on connection.